from here. That's fine. Okay, welcome to the special business meeting, which looks a lot like the committee of the whole. And we are back from recess. So what we'll do is we'll actually start with the. We've already adopted the agenda, so we'll start with the staff reports. So community services around the festivals, fairs, and events recovery fund. Is there someone to present or speak on this, or is it just to or are we just going to move the motion? Is that okay? It's moved by Councillor Stoner and seconded by Councillor French. Would you like to speak to it? Sarah is online. If we have any, at this point, if there's any clarifications around the comments, but do you want to go ahead, Councillor Stoner? Or
No, I was just going to say I am excited to see that some of our community events and organizations will be taking advantage of applying for the BC Fairs and Festivals and Events Fund to hopefully help support their recovery and escalating costs for the coming year.
Sorry, I'm not having yet switched from committee of the whole. I raised my hand for myself, but I'm chairing this meeting. I'm also I'm supportive of this. I think this this fund is great, and getting this this letter of support formalized enough that we can provide it to our not just our not-for-profits, but our for-profit entities that operate in this space, I think is important. So I will be supporting. Thank you. And with that, I'll call any other comments. So with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you for joining us, Ms. Morris, wherever she's. Okay, now we've got two recommendations from the Committee of the Whole from February 28th. So the meeting we just finished. And I'm just going to look to staff. We did some work around the LMLGA resolutions. There was also the do we want to at this time as well do we have to do anything with the 3 summits piece? There was a TUP in there. No, that'll come to us at a regular in future. Okay, so the piece to be ratified is our proposed LMLGA resolutions for the upcoming conference. And with that, we're going to do each one separately, and so I'll just sort of run through the list. I'm just going to check with our corporate officer. Should I just do the titles, or should I run through the whereases and the therefore with it?
Technically, you should read each one of them individually, but you do need to put that beginning part first, and it's that council supports submitting the following resolutions to the Lower Mainland Government Association for considering at the annual general meeting to be held May 3rd, 2023. And then you've got each of the
okay. I'll just look at our minute taker. You've got that wording okay, so that we're going to move these. We're going to recommend that we move these to the LMLGA conference, but with the specific wording that's captured by our minute taker. So with that, I'll move through these, and I will read them. I'll read them out individually all the way through with whereas clauses, just so that there's clarity for those watching at home that don't have the documentation in front of them. So the proposed resolution number 1 is titled Understanding BC Hydro's Electrification Capacity. So whereas BC municipalities are moving quickly to enable electrification through community climate action plans and municipal energy and emissions plans, and whereas there is currently a lack of funding or incentives to support electrification in existing residential, commercial, and institutional building retrofits, and a lack of certainty that the electrical grid in British Columbia has the capacity to accommodate the anticipated electrical demand that will result from future retrofits. Therefore, be it resolved that the LMLGA and UBCM coordinate with the province, BC Utilities Commission, and BC Hydro regarding the need for communities to understand BC Hydro's readiness to meet the electrification requirements and to support electrification in retrofits in order for communities to meet climate action goals. Would okay. Are you moving that? So Councillor Pettingill moves, seconded by Councillor French. I think we've discussed this. I don't see any other comments. So all in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And Ms. Arthurs, were you saying that am I going too far with the? Doing good. Okay. Sorry, I was getting some mixed messages out there. So, all right. The next up is permissive tax exemptions for religious organizations is the title. I'll read it out. Whereas statutory tax exemptions are automatically granted and applied to recipients, while municipalities are given the choice of whether or not to apply a permissive tax exemption, as well as set other parameters and limitations around permissive exemptions, such as size, duration, percentage of budget, and establish applications processed and benefit tests to maximize the public benefit derived from permissive tax exemptions. And whereas municipalities lack the ability to control the size and allocation of statutory tax exemptions, which can constitute a significant portion of municipal budgets, a statutory tax exemptions for places of worship are granted in perpetuity. Therefore, be it resolved that LMLGA and UBCM lobby the provincial government to amend the community charter to move the tax exemption granted to places of public worship under the statutory section 220 1H to the permissive section 2242.
I'll move that and I'll speak to it if it's seconded.
Moved by Councillor French, second by Councillor Hamilton. Go ahead, Councillor French.
Thanks. And just further to my comments earlier, one of the biggest aspects for me of this this motion and this move is accountability with our property tax dollars. This, if it happens, makes local government more hands-on with property taxation that comes from places of worship. And I think that that is good for everybody. And I also want to point out that from here, this will be a very long process. So if there's anybody that's listening to this and has fears about this moving forward, I want to point out that this is very early in this process. And if there is anybody that has feedback on this motion, I'm happy to hear that feedback. And I'm sure everybody at this table would be open to hearing any feedback on moving this to LMLGA. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on this? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We're halfway there, team. The next one is titled Large Infrastructure Projects Impacts on Housing Crisis. And it reads, whereas the province has acknowledged that there is a housing crisis affecting communities across all of British Columbia and has chosen to take unprecedented actions to address this challenge by looking for opportunities and taking action to deliver long-term housing supply. And whereas large infrastructure projects mandated or approved by the province put immense pressure on available housing rental and ownership stock in community, as well as tourism infrastructure by requiring significant number of temporary workers without appropriate workforce housing plans as a requirement of project approval. Therefore, be it resolved that the LMLGA and UBCM request the province require robust and detailed workforce housing plans integral to the approval process for large infrastructure projects to address and minimize the cumulative impacts of temporary workforce housing on communities and deliver a positive housing legacy. I will move that if there's a seconder. Councillor Anderson. I'll be brief. We've discussed these before. I think this is the missing piece, and we're seeing we're currently dealing with the sort of the consequence of not having a policy such as this in place. I think there's an opportunity for these large infrastructure projects to leave a positive housing legacy in their wake instead of a community that is that's just had a sort of been run over by unaffordability challenges. But to have the proponents and these projects address this in a meaningful way, it needs to live somewhere where it can be mandated and part of the approval process. So I think this is, thank you in advance for your support of this. I look forward to the discussion at LMLGA and hopefully UBCM. Any other comments? Councillor Pettingill.
Just very quickly, and my comments apply to this and the next one. I think I appreciate these resolutions. I think they're critical. For me, just to be clear, though, this does not, from my perspective, alleviate the need to deal with our current situation. This is not an alternative to what we're facing. We need to do this, lobby for this, and find a better resolution to the challenges we're currently facing in our community.
Thank you for that, and I agree with that sentiment. So with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And our fourth piece here is the large infrastructure project impacts on public safety. And it reads, whereas in 2019, BC enacted the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act and the National Inquiry to Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls found that Indigenous women and girls experienced violence as a result of industrial work camps in proximity to their communities. And whereas large infrastructure projects mandated or approved by the province are in the planning, construction, operation, and closure phases across BC, significant numbers of temporary workers are required to reside in or near communities to execute these projects, and the provincial government has committed to addressing the public safety concerns of British Columbians. Therefore, be it resolved that the LMLGA and UBCM request the provincial regulation of temporary workforce accommodation be expanded beyond basic servicing environmental requirements, and that the monitoring, evaluation, and accountability be expanded for specific recommended mitigation measures to minimize impacts on local communities, including but not limited to gender-based violence. Moved by Councillor Pettingill. I'll second. I think to me this speaks for itself, and I'm happy to support it. So with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And Council, we discussed in committee the whole the motion around the EPR for newspapers. So I'll go through the same process here, and because we didn't formally make a recommendation in that avenue, we can vote on it. Or did we have? If I see nods around the table, I can move to just not do this part of. We're just not going to. I wasn't going to put. Actually, yeah, there you go. I wasn't going to put this forward. I believe our discussion led to stepping back from this one. I'm seeing nods around the table, so we just won't entertain that one in this process. And is that a question, Councillor Stone? No, a motion to terminate by Councillor Stoner, second by Councillor Hamilton. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you so much, everyone, for your work today.